Welcome, everybody, to the Mizrahi World Movement Athletic and Sports Symposium. Thrilled to be here. Sports Rabbi Josh Halleckman. I'm going to be taking you through a journey of sports and athletes and athletics throughout this conversation. And I could not think of anybody better to start off with than Tamir Goodman. Tamir Goodman, of course, the Jewish Jordan, one of the great athletes in our religion, somebody that has been a role model to millions of people around the world ever since he graced the pages of Sports Illustrated magazine over 20 years ago. He has taken his fame into the next level where he has been able to work with so many people on so many different projects, both professionally and, of course, on the amateur level. And it brings my greatest pleasure to bring in Tamir Goodman. How are you doing today, Tamir?
Doing really well, my dear friend. Thank you so much. Thank you for thinking of me, and it's a great honor to be part of this very special initiative.
No, thanks for joining me today, Tamir. Tamir, you know, your story is so well known around the world, but I'm sure there are plenty of people that don't know exactly your story. So in a nutshell, more than 20 years ago, you were going to be the Michael Jordan of the Jewish basketball world. You were nicknamed and coined the Jewish Jordan. And you took that to the highest of levels, playing professional basketball eventually in the land of Israel. And here you are today, even though retired, you are still giving back to the Jewish people and the Jewish community in so many different ways. Talk a little bit about your life story.
Well, I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland, in a very proud Jewish home. My grandmother basically lived with us 6 months out of the year. She was a Holocaust survivor. And my parents were both incredibly, very special people. My father, unfortunately, passed away about 12 years ago. My mother, thank God, is still alive. But they knew that I loved the game. They knew that I wanted to play in college. They knew that I wanted to play professionally. But they also instilled within me the beauty of the Jewish religion and taught me that everybody could do exactly what they want to do in this world, but they have to try to do it in a way and have the right intentions. So my parents never told me that my dream was impossible. They never told me that my dream wasn't Jewish. They told me that I could do it, and they supported me, and didn't matter what was going on around us. I knew that I had my parents with me. In addition to that, I had a great community, a great rabbi, a great coach, and a great extended family and friends. And I say if I wouldn't have grown up that way, I probably wouldn't have been able to live out my dream. But thank God I grew up in the right place at the right time with the right people around me, that with a lot of hard work and dedication, I was able to become the 25th best high school player in the country by the time I was 17, ultimately get a Division I scholarship to play at Towson University without playing on Shabbat, because they changed the schedule for me, which is a miracle that I still can't stop thinking about till today. And then came over here to Israel and played here professionally for 7 years. So I'm very fortunate that I got to live out my dream. But again, a lot of it had to do with how I grew up and where I grew up.
You know, I think the support system of the Jewish family is so critical and crucial for anybody's upbringing. And in your case, obviously, they were able to give you so much as you went on this journey. I mean, as somebody that went to a Jewish high school, and like you said, you were the 25th best player in the country of the United States, which is tremendous because there are millions upon millions upon millions of people playing. It's such a small percentage to even be mentioned in that ranking. The thought of being a Jewish Orthodox person, what did that mean to you that you were at this height? People were looking at you. And obviously, anytime somebody looks at you, you are a representative of the Jewish people. What did that mean to you, and how did you take that challenge upon yourself?
Oh, thank God I had the Jewish religion, because it took a lot of the pressure off of me. It wasn't about me. It was much more about the Jewish people and Israel. And I think when we try to play for a higher purpose, it gives us a special advantage because we have more motivation to work hard. When things are going really well, we're not satisfied because it's not just about our own ego and what we want to accomplish. There's so much more to accomplish for this greater mission. And then when things were bad, or I wasn't playing well, or I was making mistakes, or things weren't as positive, I couldn't get too down or feel too sorry for myself. I had to pick myself up and get right back on track because it wasn't just about me. about this bigger initiative. So that allowed me to handle some of the media attention a lot better. You know, there was one week where I had 700 media requests in 1 week, and I was still only a teenager. They have like these articles of the most influential Jews, and I'm like, I'm ahead of the White House press secretary, and I'm only 17 years old. And, you know, it was just so much so quickly. But I say thank God for Judaism, because it gave me the blueprint and the guidelines and the direction to try to be the best basketball player that I could be. I don't think Judaism takes us away from our goals. I think Hashem supports our goals and wants us to be the best that we could be, and just simply gives us the guidelines to put us in a situation to be as successful as possible. That's the way I view it. That's what I think the Torah is. It's just, it helps us with a game plan to have a great life. That's how I see it, and Hashem's the coach.
It's quite amazing the way you focused on that so well and carved it out in such a nice niche format for us. But also, when you had to go to college at Townsend University, you obviously met, and you mentioned this earlier, the whole issue of Shabbat, which of course is the holy day in the Jewish religion every week, where everything comes to a stop. Everything comes full stop. We reflect on ourselves. We spend our day with God. We spend the day thinking about things that are not everyday work or everyday activity or everyday jobs. How did that play out for you? Obviously, in a university, with you being probably the only Jewish player for sure in that aspect. And how did the people respect you for having such morals and such, values towards your religion?
Well, in general, there was the utmost respect. I can never thank my teammates enough, the coaching staff, everyone who accommodated the schedule so that I could live out my dream. That was seen as impossible up until that point, and they managed to make it happen. In general, there was a positive atmosphere about it. We didn't have practice on Friday night because of me. So practice was early on Friday afternoon instead, and then it wasn't again until Saturday night. So that meant that the guys could be off on Friday night. So I remember on practice Friday afternoons, they were they love Shabbat. It gave them a little more time off. So on Friday afternoons at Division I practice, instead of saying 1, 2, 3 Tigers, which we usually would say for the Towson Tigers, they would say 1, 2, 3 Shabbat Shalom, because they're going to have a little bit more time to rest and recover and have Friday night off, which was nice. There's many stories of the guys coming to my dorm room on Friday night or on Shabbat day and asking me for some of the kosher food. They love the way that it tastes, the Shabbat food that my parents packed for me. But there were a lot of very challenging moments, whether it was, practicing on a fast day on Friday afternoon on the Asara B'Tevet, not eating and not drinking, getting off a team bus on Friday afternoon at an away game because I had to walk to the Jewish community. There were practices on Shabbat on the road when we had away games that I didn't need to play, but coach wanted me to be there, so I'd have to walk in the snow sometimes to get to practice and just watch practice. There was a lot of challenging moments, but those challenging moments made Shabbat alive for me. It wasn't just something that I read about in the books. It was something that I experienced with my mind, body, and soul because of this journey that I was on through basketball. And even if I was in some really place with no Jews around, I really felt Shabbat in a very powerful way because I lived it. I made some sacrifices for it, and I'm glad that I did because it really is an eternal blessing.
Tamir, I think we have to touch upon one of the big stories recently that's just happened is, of course, Deni Avdia, Jewish Israeli, was drafted to the NBA. He's going to be playing for almost your hometown team, the Washington Wizards, of course. Now, immediately, what was so striking is that the requests, the questions that are coming up on press conferences are, what was it like to celebrate your bar mitzvah? Or I had a bat mitzvah, one of the women said on the press conferences. And all of a sudden there's this Jewish pride. I've been inundated with emails and phone calls from people all over, not only the Washington, D.C. and greater Baltimore area, but across the United States. What does that mean for somebody so young that all of a sudden, as an Israeli, as a Jew, going into the NBA, he's now carrying two torches? He's not just carrying the torch of the nation, he's carrying the torch of the religion, which is something phenomenal. And I'm sure that Jews around North America will be flocking to the arenas once they're allowed back in to just get a piece of who Deni Avdia is. And you obviously have that type of experience as well, Tamir.
Yeah, I've had that experience, and I'm very very close with his agent, talking a lot about these types of things. I spoke to him at length yesterday as well. There's also been a lot of press. I've had a lot of media requests. I'll be on ESPN tomorrow, USA Today the other day. But I think that Deni, there's two things. I think he's ready for it. I think he has the skill level, the basketball IQ, and he also realizes that he's on a mission. I saw a press conference with him yesterday, and I just loved how he was talking about, I'm going as an ambassador. And like I said earlier, when you put yourself in that situation as going as an ambassador, it gives you extra power, extra motivation to represent Israel and play for something bigger than yourself. But I also think that the world in general, we live in a very unique time, a very special time where people seem to be more open to respecting minorities and respecting other people. And I don't think we need to hide our Jewish identity as much as we used to maybe in the past, or hide our connection to Israel. I think people are more accepting of it. And I think that's why you're seeing at the press conferences Jewish reporters talking about their bar mitzvah or their bat mitzvah and being proud of it. It's a very unique time. I think one of the most incredible things of the millennial generation is the emphasis on respecting other people, not putting other people down, not bullying other people, being sensitive to other people's feelings and thoughts. And that's allowed Jewish people in a lot of ways to say, it's okay to say that I'm Jewish. It's okay to say that I had a bar mitzvah. It's okay that I have a strong connection to Israel. So it's a really unique time. And I think those two parts of it, Deni being ready, viewing himself as an ambassador, and the world in general being more welcoming to accept people of different backgrounds, I think it's a really exciting combination, and I'm excited to see what will happen.
Tamir, you've been an ambassador for the Jewish people in the state of Israel yourself. So don't put that down, because since your playing career obviously has been over, you've done so much for the Jewish community. How does that work for you? Not only have you invented a piece of equipment that is used by NBA teams and across college university campuses in the United States, you also host a camp. You're bringing Jewish people together from all around the world. How important is that for you as your post-playing career, really sets in at this point now for a number of years?
I think my wife, Judy, summed it up the best when we spoke about this. And she's like, you're still doing the same thing. You're just wearing a different uniform. In other words, when I played, I didn't play for just to score points and just for basketball. I tried to play for a higher purpose. And now I'm just the mission hasn't changed. I'm still trying to do good things through basketball. Everything I'm involved in throughout the day usually has to do with some type of positive project through basketball, whether it's helping players, coaches, product development, Israeli sports tech, working with special needs kids, charity initiatives, basketball programming around the world. That's what I did when I played, and that's what I'm still doing till today. And I'm very thankful for that. I wake up every morning and I get exciting emails and phone calls of different opportunities. And I think that's what Judaism is. Like, okay, Hashem gave me basketball. Hashem gives other people different things. And everyone has to look at their unique journey, their unique blessings, and say, okay, what am I going to do with this? How can I uplift this? How can I partner with Hashem? How can I better the world through this physical blessing, whether it's basketball or law or dance or whatever it is? That's what Judaism is all about. And I'm just very grateful and thankful that I could do what I love every single day and try to find ways to help people through it.
Well, Tamir Goodman, you are one of the role models that children and adults alike can look up to you throughout and across the globe. We're so pleased that you've joined us today with the Mizrahi World Movement, our symposium on athletics and Judaism. Thank you so much for coming aboard. I think you've inspired so many more people today with your kind words. And we wish you the best of luck in all the projects as you continue on in your post-playing career and into the future.
Thank you so much for the kind words, my dear friend. Thank you for everything you're doing with all of your projects as well. And thank you to World Mizrahi for inviting me to be part of this very cool initiative. I would definitely encourage everyone to support World Mizrachi in every way possible as their work continues even through these very challenging times.
Thank you so much, Tamir. All right, we're back here. Sports Rabbi Josh Halleckman, Mizrachi World Movement. We have the greatest honor and the greatest pleasure in welcoming on board Israel's first Olympic medalist, Yael Arad, the 1992 Barcelona Games. Wow, what a moment. I remember it like it was yesterday. Yael, do you remember it like it was yesterday still?
Hi, Josh. First of all, thank you for inviting me, and I'm very happy to be part of this panel. Yes, you know, it's this is the moment that you never forget. Even within the time and so many years that passed already, I think that this second when you see the referee raise her hand for the ippon, and you look at the electronic clock, and you see Israel there in English, and then you realize that you made it. You won the semifinal. I'm in the final, Olympic final. I fulfilled my dream. Actually, I won an Olympic medal. It's the first Olympic medal for Israel. You look at the crowd, you see there 200 people with Israeli flags. For you, it's the whole country there. I look at my coach, my friends, and it's something that can't express really words. And this is, seconds that it goes from your head to your heart, and you lose it. It's like starting jumping all over, and it's a great moment.
Now I'm getting goosebumps as you're describing the moment itself. Did you realize what kind of effect this was going to have on the entire country of Israel and the Jewish people throughout the world? This was a moment etched in time that really broke all different barriers, Yael.
You never can really imagine how it will be and what kind of effects it will have during the years, especially when we look now 28 years after. You cannot imagine this, especially when I was only 25 years old. But I must admit that within the time, the last 2 years before the Olympic Games, myself and the people around me, we realized how thirsty the Israeli people are for this achievement. People really escort me during this period before the Olympic Games. They really they were very involved, the Israeli public. It was a different time without internet and without YouTube and Facebook, so it was different. You could just all the time go in the street and people just kill you from love, and I knew it's going to be big. I knew it's something that it's a real deep thing, that it's something that will create a big thing in Israel, and especially what you said, the barrier, the mental barrier, that the psychological thing that before 92 no one did win a medal, and no one stood on the podium, even though we had on 88, Eldad Amir and Yoel Sela that were almost there. But we knew that this barrier, I felt it, that once we will break through, things will be different. Once a Sabres from Israel will do it, will make it, people will really believe that it's possible. Because, when I was a kid, they told us all the time, never mind, you lost, at least you stood hard, at least you did it with pride. No one expected us to become the best in the world. But I decided when I was 16 that that's what I want. And I had a very long and difficult way to the top. But once I did it, I think every Israeli understood that if you have the talent and you work hard and you believe in yourself, you will get there.
You know, Yael, winning a medal, of course, in the Olympics in judo, a discipline that at the time Israel was just becoming to get into. But over the last 28 years, we have won multiple medals in judo. You are also today involved, of course, in the Israel Olympic Committee. What brings all that together for you, that you were able to really start creating a movement where Israel has brought now roughly 10 medals home and are constantly competing in European championships, world championships, especially in the judo? How important that? What type of effect do you feel you've had on the sport and all Olympic sports in general for Israel?
Yes, I think it's not only about judo. I think because Israel is such a small country, and everything is based in the center, and everybody know each other. So I think that eventually, after this barrier was, we broke the barrier. So and in the same time, the Israeli sport became more professional. The management understood that they have to invest the money for the athletes and not for other things. It sounds maybe ridiculous, but when I was very young, it wasn't like this. So I think since 88 or 90, and then of course after the Olympic medal, people realized here that we need more money, and the money should be spent correctly, and we have to be professional. And there was a big change before for me in my career. Before I was third in the world in '91 and the Olympic medal, and after the next 4 years, where I became European champion and second in the world and champion of many other tournaments. I think we as athletes in Israel, we started to get much more help and support, and it was really totally different. And together with the psychological understanding that it's possible, people became more and more professional, started to travel much more for competitions, for training camp. The coaches became better. The coaches became more professional. I mean, in the Olympic sport, individual sport, and we became professional. Not in terms of making a lot of money, but in terms of having industrial quiet and the possibility to become to train every day, a few times a day. Not that you don't have to go to work or do other things. And you see that today we have 9 Olympic medals. We have in every 4 years of Olympic cycle, we have over 30 medals for European and World Championships for all kind of Olympic sports. So we become professional.
That's so important, becoming professional. Obviously, one of the steps that Israel's taken over the years, and we see that in all the competitions with all the teams that go out, so crucial when everybody goes out, they represent not only the country of Israel, but also the entire Jewish people, which is something so proud. One of the moments I have to bring you back to, obviously, when you won that medal, I'm sure some of the memories of the 1972 Munich Games came flooding into your head, the knowledge that you have now been able to take an Israeli flag to the top, thinking of the athletes that were murdered at the hand of the terrorists. How important was that for you individually to be able to make that accomplishment, and then for the entire country of Israel to really finally say, yes, we are here, and we can now, obviously, we can never wipe out what happened in 1972, but we can feel a pride in what we have done on the Olympic stage.
Yeah, I'm happy that you raised this subject because, I was 5 years old when the massacre occurred, and I grew up in the Israeli sport. It was part of our tradition. We grew up with the understanding that the Olympic movement with all the values that it has. Eventually, our best athletes, referees, and coaches were murdered during the Olympic Games. And before I went to Barcelona, I felt that I like to meet the families. I wanted to tell them that we didn't forget their beloved ones, and we are part of this family. And I went to meet a few of the widows and their families, and it was really touching. And when I left this house, it was 2 weeks before the Olympic Games. I promised myself that if I will win an Olympic medal, I will dedicate it to the memory of our athletes. And while I was standing on the podium, not so happy because I was, second place and not first. But while I was standing on the podium, I knew that they will take me to a press conference with journalists from all over the world that will come to meet the first Olympic medal of our country, which that's how it happens always. And I went there with 100 journalists, all kind of languages, and I stood there, and I said, of course, in English, today we close the circle of the Israeli sport. Today we show the world that the Israeli sport is still here. And back then, not all journalists remembered what happened in Munich. So I told them the story, and I dedicated in that moment my medal to the 11 athletes, Israeli athletes, referees, and coaches. And for me, it was a very special moment, a moment where I could bridge between the saddest event in the Israeli sport to the happiest one back then, and to give back to the community I grew from. And it was very important for me back then and also today. And I'm very happy that in Rio, just a few years ago, the International Olympic Committee decided at last to have a special memory in the Olympic Village, to bring a special stone and to do a special ceremony, which will move to the next Olympic Games. And also in Munich, that they built after 45 years, they built in the Olympic Park a special monument. And I think it's really like closing a circle eventually, which will never bring them back, but at least we will remember them all over the world with pride, the way they deserve.
Yael, before we finish off, the Olympic Games today and the Olympic athletes come from so many different countries. And in Israel, we are a melting pot of Jews throughout the entire world. You could see on the Olympic team, we have in Israel swimmers that made Aliyah from the United States. We have the baseball team, which are many players that have made Aliyah. How important is the diaspora, the Jews that are out in Israel that can come and be a part of Israel? How important are they to the whole entire movement of the Israel Olympic Committee and team?
I think it's very important. I think that, first of all, the fact that Israel can be really the place where everybody can come and be part, it's really the most important thing. And the sport as a bridge to the Jewish communities around the world is also very important, not only by what you just said, but also the Maccabiah Games, the fact that the Jews from all over the world can come through, some of them come because of birth, how do you call it? Birthright, and some of them can come through the Maccabiah Games, which is when the sport is a bridge. It's very important to get to know Israel better, and not only because we like them to make the Aliyah, but also because we need them in the diaspora to support us. After all, we are only 9 million people. We sound like 90 million, but we're very small. and we need this support all over the world. And of course, for the Olympic team, it's very important for us to grow the athletes in Israel, to support them, to give them the conditions to become the best in the world. But for sure, when we have Jews that are coming from abroad and they're willing to be part of what we do here, not only to come because they want to be part in the Olympic team, but to be part of the Israeli infrastructure. So I think it's very important. We are always happy to have them, and we hope then that they will stay in Israel and support what we do here for the Israeli sport and for our sake here anyway. So it's great.
Yael, Mizrahi World Movement wants to thank you so much for spending the time today. You have opened up doors for so many people around the world to know that there is a home for them here in Israel, a sports home, and it really brings everything together in athletics and Judaism, this symposium. We thank you so much for spending the time. It's been an absolute honor and an absolute pleasure. You are a role model to so many that are out there. Thank you so much. Happy Hanukkah.
Thank you, Josh, and thank you for really inviting me. I'm very happy to speak in front of all this audience, and I wish I will see you here in Israel soon.
All right, Sports Rabbi Josh Halleckman back here with yet another great guest with Mizrahi World Movement. This time we are on with a European champion. Yes, can you imagine a European champion? I'm sure he'd like to be an Olympic champion as well. It is Yuval Freilich coming to us from the Holy Land of Israel. And you'll never guess, folks, what sport he competes in. It is fencing, and that is a sport that is a near dear sport for the sports rabbi, growing up with that through university years at Yeshiva University. Yuval, how you doing today?
I'm great. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Great to have you. Now, Yuval, it is rare that a Jewish athlete competes in the sport of fencing, at least from my check. I mean, as an amateur level, for sure, it's something that people do in university. It was very popular my years back then, back in the 90s at Yeshiva University. But to be competing at the highest level that you've done throughout your life, both in junior levels and at the senior levels, a European champion 2019 in Dusseldorf. How did you get into the sport of fencing, Yuval?
Fencing, I've been fencing for about 15 years now. I started in Sydney. While I was there, I lived there with my family, and we saw the Olympics in the 2000 Sydney Olympics. And from the very beginning, I remember hearing the blades tick against each other, and it just stuck in my mind. And straight away, I started looking for a club in Sydney. Then when we came back to Israel, we looked for a club, and from there it was pretty straightforward. But it all started at the Sydney Olympics.
Well, that's really amazing. Of course, Sydney Olympics, one of the great Olympic games that we've had in the past. Now, is that obviously something that you would love to reach? Obviously a European champion. And I know it's quick to get off into the Olympics right away, but what do the Olympic Games mean to you as an athlete and especially as a fencer?
Well, the Olympics is definitely the cherry on the topping. It's the peak of any athlete's aspirations. The Olympics is the top of any competition. Everyone speaks about the World Championships, European Championships, and regular competitions, but at the very top, it's the Olympics. And it would be a great story starting fencing after seeing Sydney Olympics and getting to the Olympics. But as you say, I'm not jumping there. There's still a long time to go. Hopefully the Olympics will happen. But the aspiration, and that is the path that I'm taking to try to get to Tokyo.
Yuval, you started fencing, like you mentioned, 15 years ago in Sydney. What was it like as a Jewish person, as a Jew, to compete in the sport in, of course, Australia? What was that like for you?
Well, first of all, fencing is a pretty Jewish sport historically. There is a sports doctor, as they say, who's done a doctorate on sports, has done a lot of research, and fencing is a relatively Jewish sport, if you can call it that. And I never really thought about a Jew doing sport. You know, it was just something pretty natural for me. I think as I improved and as I got better and as I started competing on the world stage, that is really when I started feeling that being Jewish and being Israeli it has more weight. It has more importance. It's more significant. As a young athlete in Australia, just starting my professional career, I didn't give it much thought. But representing Israel and being a Jew overseas and traveling all over Europe, and it's very special for me.
You know, Yuval, you were a #1 ranked épée cadet in the world back in 2012, 2015, #1 ranked junior épée fencer in the world, not just in Israel, not just in Europe, not just in Australia or Oceania or any of those different areas, but the world. What does that mean for you as now somebody that is competing in Israel? What did that mean for you and for the country in itself?
Well, on a personal level, of course, I'm very proud of my achievements, and I work hard and I do my best to try be as good a fencer as I can. But to the question about how it reflects on being Israeli or Jewish, that is where I really respect to my profession as an athlete, because being able to represent Israel, and it's not something you can take for granted. It's something very special. Israel is a very young country. We know the history of Israel, and being able to represent Israel and be part of its culture and its tradition and keep Israel as complete as possible. Also, there's the politics and there's culture and there's tradition, all those things, and sports is really part of the culture, and being able to develop it and be part of it it's really important for me. It's very special.
How important, speaking of importance, were your parents and your family in helping you structure yourself growing up as a child, and then as a young adult, and now as a man in this type of profession, as we talk about athletics and Judaism? How important was that family aspect?
Well, my professional career could never have developed as it did without my family, without my parents. I got complete backing all the time. There were some difficult decisions to be made along the way, and I always had their support and always had their backing in every aspect. And we're a very tight group, tight unit, the whole family, and they pushed me forward and they've given me the support. And being an athlete isn't only uphill. There are downhills. It's a roller coaster. You get peaks and you get the lows, and they've always been with me, and I'm very grateful to them, of course.
You know, Yuval, you worked out of the Hapoel Kfar Saba club. Your national coach is Ohad Balva. Talk a little bit about what it was like getting into the sport once you returned from Australia to Israel. What did you find here, and where is the sport today in the Holy Land?
Well, at the beginning, I remember getting to my first training, coming from Australia. And in Australia, I get to my training and we start training on time, and there's discipline, and you listen to what the coach says. And the very first time I walked into training in the club in Israel, it was like a zoo. People were running around. There's no discipline. There's just it was pretty crazy. And all I wanted to do was just start and do my fencing.
Balagan. It's all
balagan. That was exactly the word. It was a big balagan. And I was standing there waiting for the coach to start the lesson, and he was trying to get everyone together and try to get things going. And but from the very beginning, I was pretty disciplined, and I knew what I wanted. I knew that I wanted to be a good fencer, and I did what I had to do to create the framework to allow me to develop and to improve. And that was my very first experience as training in Israel. And as I developed as a fencer, I also became more professional. I understood what it meant to train at a high level and to cooperate with my coach. And we had to work together and try to build each other, as well as my coach as a coach and me, of course, as an athlete. And we developed, and we've been working together for a long time, me and Ohad.
Now, where do you see the sport today for the youngsters that would want to join this type of activity, both in Israel, both abroad? Where do you see the future of the sport?
Well, fencing is a difficult sport in the sense of let's say crowd, the way the crowd sees sport, because it's a very fast sport. It's not really understood. You can't see the athletes' faces. There are a few issues with the audience that's not easy on the eye. But fencing is the most incredible sport. There's a lot of work to do, of course, for the spectators. But fencing includes everything. It's coordination, it's decision making, it's athleticism, it's being able to think under pressure. There are so many aspects in fencing, and it's such an incredible sport for me. Although I'm not very objective, it's the ultimate sport. And anyone who wants to, really challenge themselves, fencing is definitely the way to go.
Yuval, before we let you go, I want to take you back to Dusseldorf 2019. You're in the final. I believe you're facing an Italian, Andrea Santarelli, if I'm correct. What is going through your mind as a Jew, as an Israeli athlete, as you're in this bout where you can take home the gold, knowing that the next stage is to be standing on a podium with the Israeli flag being hoisted into the air and you being able to sing Hatikva? What is that like? Bring us back to that moment when you're in that action.
Well, during the bout, of course, and going up to the bout, there was no thinking about what will happen if I win, and my focus was, of course, only on the bout as much as I could, as much as I could control it, and I was focusing on how I'm going to hit the next touch. But I can tell you that afterwards, after I'd finished the bout and after it was all over and I'd won and I was standing on the podium and there was the Hatikva, it is an extraordinarily special moment for me, and it always will be. I'll remember it forever. Standing in Germany, where we all know it's what that signifies, being an Israeli Jew representing Israel and hearing the Hatikva is something. Also, I'm thinking about it now. It's quite emotional, and it really is a very, very special moment. And all the hard work, of course, as a professional athlete to get to there, but being in Germany and doing it in Germany gives it this extra significance, and really something special.
Wow, the tears are almost pouring out of my eyes just listening to it. It's so emotional. It's such an exciting moment. It's one of the highlights of any Israeli athlete's career, to be able to stand there and listen to Hatikva, to hear it, to sing it. And of course, as you mentioned, to be in Germany makes it even that much more important in the whole nature of things, of course, in the historical past, and especially the most recent past with Germany and the Jewish people in Israel. Yuval Freilich, an épée fencer, an amazing career to date. We are looking forward to seeing you at the Olympic Games one day, standing once again on the podium, watching the Israeli flag being lifted into the air as we all together sing as one nation, Hatikva, the hope for the greatest country in the world. Of course, Am Yisrael Chai. Yuval Freilich, thanks for joining us with Mizrachi World Movement today on our Athletes in Sports Symposium.
Thank you very much for having me. Chag Sameach.
All right, Sports Rabbi Josh Halikman here, of course, with Mizrachi World Movement. We have our next guest, and it is none other than the marathon mom, the woman that has taken the world by a storm. It is none other than Beaty Deitch. How are you doing today, Beaty?
I'm doing great, although tired. It's the end of a long day.
Well, we're happy to have you on board here, of course, with the Mizrachi World Movement. And what is amazing is your story, from really coming out of nowheres to shock the world, to make headlines. You are a marathon runner. You represent Israel. You have been in many countries throughout the world, not only telling your story, but running the great race. Beaty Deitch, how did you get into becoming a marathon runner?
I was really tired of being out of shape after having 4 kids in 6 years. And I was just like, okay, what's the easiest exercise I can do that will cost me nothing and like not take up not be too involved? And it was like running. I could just go right out my door and run. So I told my husband I was going to sign up for a marathon. Which I know it's a bit extreme. Most people do the couch to 5K route, and I did the couch to marathon route. I gave myself 4 months to train for it, and I ran my very first marathon in February 2016 in Tel Aviv, and shocked myself by running a 3:27. Actually came in 6th place for women, And I realized that I loved it and I was good at it. And I continued running, just, not ever expecting that it would take me where it has taken me, but every year getting faster, having different crazy stories along the way. And when I won the Israel National Championship in 2019, I was offered like a spot as a candidate for the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. And I grabbed the opportunity. It's been amazing.
It's quite an amazing journey, really. The rags to riches, from absolutely not knowing you had this God-given talent in essence. And of course, we're here talking about athletics and Judaism. What was it like to find out that, yes, you had this special talent and you were really just doing it as exercise? But all of a sudden, how did one thing lead to the next, where you are now a role model for so many young women, and of course, young Jewish women, both mothers and others that are, just getting into sports and showing that exercise is something special? But when did you realize that you had something special that you had to offer to us?
Well, I don't really feel like there was all of a sudden moment, but definitely it's been a journey that has progressed. Even at earlier points in my journey, I never would have even said I was going for these kind of goals. Like, it wasn't even on my mind, which has made me realize just how much we have within us that we're so often not aware of. But I think once I won the National Marathon Championship in Israel, and in that race, I ended up running 6 minutes faster in the second half of the marathon, which is a pretty big deal. Like, when you're running a marathon, I knew that there was like that I had serious potential there. And so I wanted to pursue it. And the amazing thing about sport, and especially running, is that it drives you to constantly seek more from yourself, and you always want to become the best version of yourself as a runner, which ultimately, I think that's what we're all trying to do as Jews. That's what we're all constantly striving for. So it gives you a very tangible physical outlet to do what you're supposed to be doing in a spiritual level also. And just like you're focused on that mission in all areas of your life.
Bidi, when you run the marathon, you dress modestly, you're wearing long sleeves, your hair is covered, you're wearing skirts, very different than probably 99.9% of all the other marathon runners. Now, obviously, that must bring up questions as to who you are, what you are, why are you wearing what you're wearing? What does that mean as somebody that, of course, is promoting Judaism and is promoting modesty and is promoting the fact that, yes, young Jewish women can make a mark in an international sport like that?
I think that one thing I've seen is that when you respect yourself and you're proud of what you're doing, and you don't need to apologize for what you're doing, people respect you for that. So when I show up at the race, like, dressed the way I am, I'm proud of it. I'm very proud to be visibly Orthodox. This is what I've done my whole life. Yeah, you can be fast and run in a skirt. We're starting new trends here. And I think people really appreciate it. And I've for the most part, only gotten positive responses. And so many women have told me that, they used to be embarrassed to wear skirts, or they wouldn't have gone out running in a skirt. And because they see me doing it and standing on the podium, they feel a lot more proud to do it, and they're going out there and doing it. And to me, it's incredibly humbling just to realize how much of an impact you can make in this world, just in your own way, without even realizing you touch people's lives.
Bidi, you are really a servant of God, and Eved Hashem. Anytime anybody sees you, you are a role model for so many people. What does that mean to you, that you can give back to so many people that never even thought about the fact that, yes, I can exercise, or yes, I can be at the top of my sport as an Orthodox woman?
Well, the crazy thing is that my whole life I'd always been, my goal was to share the beauty of Judaism and to touch other Jewish people's lives. And I wanted to be a teacher from when I was a young child. And I was involved in all kinds of Jewish programs forever. And before I became a professional athlete, that's what I worked in. I worked in the field of Jewish outreach, and I connected with thousands of students all around the world. And all of a sudden, I was able to feel like my worlds colliding, like a gift, something that I love, a passion, a hobby, what I'm able to use as a tool to continue this mission, and in a unique way that not many other people are able to do. So I feel incredibly blessed and grateful that I've had this clarity in my life, and that Hashem has given me this gift of running, and that I get to share it with so many people and make a difference in their lives, and ultimately really bridge gaps and break barriers. And I've seen in Israel, like, how I'm able to break down stereotypes about religious people and bring people together. And to me, there's no greater like privilege. It's really, I'm really blessed.
No. For sure. It's such an amazing privilege. And one of the privileges that you're trying to reach, one of the goals, and you mentioned it earlier, was Tokyo, was the Olympic Games Tokyo, obviously pushed off for a year to 2021. The marathon is scheduled for women to be on Shabbat. That is something that you have spoken out very proudly about and very loudly about. Talk about that whole challenge of, on one hand, you want to compete so badly. On the other hand, you do have your principles and what is important in, of course, Jewish custom and Jewish tradition for you.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy when I found out that the date of the marathon was being rescheduled for Shabbat, because like there's just so many events in the Olympics, and like it's so crazy that I even made it to this far. Like, why did it have to be that my one event, only women's marathon, had to be moved to Shabbos? Almost like there's a God or up there running the show. So as disappointing as it was, it also made me realize, like, if I am not able to run, that was all part of God's plan the whole time. And like the greatest possible thing I could do is stand up and say, like, you know what's even more important than competing on the most, elite international stage of athletics? To celebrate Shabbat, to observe Shabbat, and to stay steadfast in my values. And so, as you know, I'm not giving up the fight, because I believe it's important to speak up for religion and to maybe pave the way for other people that face similar challenges. But regardless of what the outcome is, I fully I'm going to be proud either way, whether it means I'm able to participate in the marathon because they moved the date, or whether it means I stayed at home and didn't go to Tokyo because Shabbat is more important to me. I fully accept both of those outcomes.
Bidi, it's quite an amazing journey that you've gone on so far. And there are people that are looking up to you now, and they're saying, how can I be, or how can I take, and what can I take from Bidi Deitch to be the best Jewish person that I can be? What advice do you have to those people?
That's a great question. The one thing I think is so important is that we're all unique. We're all created with our own very special mission. And our goal here on earth is to figure out what's my mission. And the only way you can do that is when you get to know yourself better. I think the very first step in becoming the best version of ourselves, in figuring out how we're contributing to the world and to Jewish people, is to take a deep dive into ourselves and try and really understand what makes me special, what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, and really get to know yourself. That's the key. That's the foundation. Without a deep level of self-awareness, you won't be able to get anywhere in life. So that's the first step.
Amazing. Bidi Deitch, thank you so much for coming on with us today. Mizrahi World Movements Athletics and Sports Symposium. It was great to have you, and best of luck as you continue your career. We're all going to be watching.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure.
All right, we're here with the sports rabbi Josh Halleck, Mizrahi World Movement, of course, our athletics and sports symposium. We've had a number of great guests so far, and now we bring on Elliot Steinmetz. Of course, he's the coach of the Yeshiva University Maccabees. one of the great stories of the last half decade or so. Elliot, you're the leader of the group of players that have put, as they say, Yeshiva University on the basketball map. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on. Definitely exciting to finally get to speak to you in person a little bit.
Yeah. Now, Elliot, so what has been the secret of not only your success, but of course the whole program's success at Yeshiva University? You have a basketball team that has been around for many, 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 many years. And over the last number of years, it is moving up to a much higher level of play, and it's improving. It's putting Judaism, basketball, yeshiva on the map, all those three things, and athletics. How does that come together for you?
I think a lot of it is the level of athletics in the Jewish world over the last number of years has really taken a big step and has really jumped, not just one level, but a number of levels. I think you see it in the high school game, within the yeshiva leagues in New York and New Jersey and across the country in different Jewish day schools. And you see the seriousness of sports, not just in our world, but obviously outside of the Jewish world has taken a real leap. The resources that are available to athletes, the seriousness with which athletes and their parents take sports. And I think the Jewish world has been no different. And I think we've partly been the beneficiary of some recruiting where we've been able to bring in, higher level athletes than we may have had in the past. But most importantly, I think it's mindset. And I think it's, this is something that has been built over many, many years from before I got here. Whether it's bringing it into the NCAA and bringing YU into a conference. And then, I've had the good fortune and the blessing to be able to kind of bring it forward a little bit with some of the players we've been able to attract, and the mindset that they have, where they don't look at mediocrity as a goal, they look at excellence as a goal, and they've strived for that, and so far have really been on the road towards achieving it.
I think in Judaism we always want to try to be the best that we can be at whatever it is, every minute of the day, and that is something that you're being a huge factor for these young men in a challenging time. Obviously, they're in university, they're studying a dual curriculum, they are also representing not only the school, but also Judaism, Israel, all at the same time. That's a huge responsibility, Elliot.
It is. It's a lot on their shoulders. We talk about it usually before every season. Even more so, now with all the exposure we've gotten over the last couple of years, and one of the crazy things that has come out of this whole pandemic was the exposure we got after the NCAA tournament, and obviously the cancellation of the season while we were still playing. But it is a big responsibility, and I think it's something that our guys look at not as really a burden, but as a positive responsibility and something that they enjoy being a part of. When we were able to have fans at the game, and you have hundreds and hundreds of people there, and a lot of younger kids who look up to these guys and want to take pictures and get autographs, I think our guys start to see the impact that they have. I get emails from all over the world. Just last week, I got an email from somebody in Alaska, a Jewish grandfather who, all he wanted was to have me do a Zoom with him and his grandson and their Chabad rabbi and just be a part of their weekly session to kind of discuss yeshiva basketball. So things like that and the impact that we start to see that we're having on Jews around the world, I think is not just a responsibility, but really an awesome one.
What do the young men think about that role? That obviously is not easy. They're thrust into it, and they have to really walk a fine line, especially in athletics and especially in basketball. When it gets heated, there's confrontations potentially on the court, and then again, you're also representing. You're all a lot of the players, or some of them are wearing kippot, so that obviously there's an outward view right away. There's yeshiva plastered on their chests, on their jerseys. How does that all come into play for you, Elliot?
It's maturity, and it's part of it's part of the recruiting process. We've turned down guys who we don't think can handle that sort of a burden of representation, regardless of their talent level. We're recruiting a certain personality. One of the things we talk about every day at practice and after every game is the concept of selflessness, and we differentiate selflessness from just being plain unselfish. You know, we talk it through with our guys, and we talk through the differences between, you know, somebody who's selfish and is out for themselves, and somebody who might be unselfish and you know, might be looking for ways to help our team as a whole, but through their own, you know, through their own benefit. And then we talk about the concept of selflessness and pure selflessness, where, you know, the idea of helping everybody else, you know, and trusting that they're going to on their own help you, you know, to help the team as a whole. And I think it's that mentality and that attitude of player that we bring in that allows us to really have that positive influence. You know, we recognize what we represent. We recognize, you know, how many people are watching, and I think we have the right, you know, the right student athletes and the right guys involved.
Elliot, the basketball as a sport also teaches so much Jewish characteristics, Jewish values. What are some of those values that you try to instill into the players, into your team, into the everyday life of these players, these young adults?
So I think one of the concepts would be, you know, treating others how you want to be treated. You know, and I think it piggybacks on that concept of selflessness that I was just talking about, where, you know, we're not just looking to score a ton of points by having individual players score points. We're looking to score a ton of points by having individual players help the other players score points. And I think that concept that we really you know, drill and discuss, you know, at length at practices and you know, throughout the course of the season is something that has allowed us to be successful, but at the same time kind of bring in that concept of, you know, helping other people, even within the framework of competition, to be successful.
You know, Elliot, also one of the most amazing things of college basketball programs that we've seen in the great colleges, if it's Division I schools like Duke or North Carolina, is the tree. Is the tree of coaches. It's the tree of the players. It's the players coming back to their roots. It's this whole, it's really, you're literally planting a tree and then you're bearing the fruits. What is it like for the alumni that have either played for the team, for the alumni that have watched the team, for the past, you know, everybody that's been involved with the club? What does that mean for, really, for the Jewish life of those people as they continue on and then come back and they complete this circle?
So I think it's been a really cool experience to really, you know, number one, see people at games. You know, we see a lot of alumni who played, you know, from the 50s and on. I mean, from all ranges and all ages and all parts of the country. We see them at different games, whether it's at a home game or when we're out in California or in Maryland. And just to get to meet some of them and talk to them and be in touch with them, whether it's on social media or by email, it kind of, you know, lays a real groundwork of the importance of you know, what we're carrying forward. You know, I talk all the time about some of the teams we had the first 3-4 years where we weren't necessarily getting the same exposure we've gotten the last few years, where, you know, our our point of excellence was, you know, kind of being in the playoffs and competing in the Skyline playoffs, whereas now our goals are obviously a little bigger than that. And I like to talk about the fact that those are the guys who really got us here. You know, those are the ones who kind of set the standard and set the level of competition and the goals that we were going to have moving forward. And the truth is that really does trace back. It traces back to the coaches who were here before. It traces back to the players who were here before. And we get to see them at games and kind of show them, hey, we've kind of taken this torch and brought it forward for you, and it's on your shoulders that we've done it. And you know, more than that is kind of seeing how some of them, I get some of their kids playing for me now, guys who have played, you know, 20, 30 years ago and suddenly have, you know, a kid, you know, enrolled at YU that makes the team. And that's kind of exciting also. That's
really an amazing circle of life, which is so important to Judaism, Jewish values. Now, obviously, many of the players that you've touched won't be professional players. Perhaps one or two may come to Israel and continue their basketball career. But what do you want to leave these students with, especially within their Jewish values that they've gotten from basketball specifically?
I think it's an approach for life. You know, I talk all the time with our athletic director and other people involved in our administration that, you know, there's certain times that guys are learning lessons, both from negative and positive things that will go on in their lives and, you know, in school and on the team. And, you know, we have to always remember this is just basketball. It's just a game. Nothing has showed us that more than this last 8-9 months or so. I said it after our season got canceled, but life has the world has a funny way of showing us the importance of basketball and other trivial things, and certainly this pandemic has been an interesting way to prove that. But I think it's the maturity and the ability to deal with adversity, the ability to kind of interact with, in our world, it's obviously colleagues and teammates and even opponents, but it's also referees, and it's also positions of authority, whether it be coaches or professors or athletic directors or athletic staff, and the ability to interact with all those different people and to be respectful and to speak speak clearly and smartly and all those things are skills that these kids will take with them the rest of their lives, and hopefully continue to represent not just the university, but themselves and obviously the Jewish nation in a very, very positive way, the same way they've done their 3 or 4 years here.
Elliot Steinmetz, thank you so much for being a part of this Athletics and Sports Symposium with Mizrachi World Movement. Your stories were so inspiring. We're so excited to see you continue the legacy of the great coaches from Yeshiva University, putting your stamp on a program that is going to be a light upon the nations throughout the decades to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate being a part of this.
All right, this was absolutely an amazing symposium on athletics and Judaism. Mizrachi World Movement put on such a great show. I'm so proud to have been a part of this, speaking to such amazing athletes like Tamir Goodman, an Olympic medalist, Israel's first Yael Arad, Bidi Deitch, who is taking marathon running to an elite level, Yuval Freilich, the amazing fencer coming out of here from Israel, and of course, Elliot Steinmetz, coaches at Yeshiva University, that has taken Yeshiva's program, basketball program, to the highest level that it could reach in Division III. This has been an absolute amazing symposium. I hope you all enjoyed it. I certainly have. Mizrachi World Movement brings you wonderful, amazing, excellent types of programs like this on a regular basis. Hope you enjoyed it. Please join us for one of our other programs down the road.